5-7. 5-7 was the fate of Aggie football in 2022. So naturally, any sane person would have a plethora of questions going into the following year. What's going to happen with coaching? Petrino time. Play calling. Jimbo. Is the O-line finally going to get it together? Find some stability. Stay healthy. Is the roster going to stay healthy as a whole? Where's strength and conditioning at? Is that a question that needs to be raised? D-line youth. Have they stepped up? Have they taken the next step? How has this offseason been? How has the last year of experience affected this young and very, very promising defensive line? Will they be able to find a consistent edge rush? We hope so. We need to see that. Will the quarterback room finally find some stability for the first time since Kellen Mond? Lots of question marks. A new year with many, many talking points, many question marks circling around it. But despite those question marks and concerns, today was a good day. Today was the day that I woke up and had on the agenda to create the first preseason 2023 Texas A&M YouTube video. There are many unofficial starts to a college football season. To some, it's media days, because that's when the content, the interviews, the talking points come flooding in. Now, there's stuff here and there throughout the offseason. Obviously, there's recruiting, there's transfer portal now, coaching carousel, lots of things to talk about. But we all love football, and we all love the actual season. We actually like Saturdays in the fall. That's actually what we're working towards and what we actually care about. And that is right around the corner. So to some, it's SEC Media Days. To other, it's the start of fall camp, probably to the players. That's probably the unofficial start of the season, or the official start. Once the helmet and pads come on, the jerseys are donned, these players are in season. Maybe to some fans, it's week 0, the first college football game, week 1, whenever their team plays. But to some, it's when they make that first preseason A&M YouTube video. And I'm one of them. So today, to me, is the start of college football. And to celebrate that, and in honor of that, I'm going to do an A&M YouTube video for every weekday throughout fall camp. That's right, a month of A&M football, talking points, storylines, breakdowns, predictions. We're going to go through everything there is to go through between now and the start of week 1. And that will culminate in my official prediction on the season. That'll come somewhere down the end of the line of these 20 videos that are going to prime you for this Texas A&M football season. And throughout all of this, there's going to be an undertone of uncertainty, an undertone of unpredictability with this football team. Because as many reasons as there are to be excited, this team was 5-7 last year. Not a good football team. In many of the games were close. Sure, there were some legitimate excuses, youth, injuries, but bottom line, 5-7. This team was not good. But 2023 is a new year. It is a new present that is yet to be unwrapped. It's still in a box, but we're going to do our best to predict what is in that box. What are we going to get this year? And are those same question marks from last year going to persist into this season? So starting things off, I guess I got to start with the hottest topic in maybe the West, maybe the SEC West. It's definitely in the top few talking points of all of college football this year. And that is the dynamic between Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino. Obviously, at media days, Jimbo Fisher did not satisfy the media horde that was questioning him about the play calling duty split between him and Bobby Petrino. And I thought this was pretty much a foregone conclusion after spring and after a couple of player interviews. I thought it was pretty obvious that Bobby Petrino was calling the plays. Nevertheless, many, many question marks about this since media days because of what Jimbo said, because of his failure to announce Bobby as the guy that will be calling the plays for the 2023 season. I don't think this is going to be a talking point for long, but I do acknowledge that it's a question mark that we're going to need to be answered probably in the first game of the year. We're going to be able to judge if Jimbo is calling plays or not by the amount of papers in his hand and the amount of scrambling he's doing on the sideline versus New Mexico to start the year. So look out for that. Who's calling the plays? Who's calling the plays? I'm less concerned about the play calling itself than I am about the split of Jimbo Fisher's duties. it just seemed like there were constant clock management issues, constant game management issues over the last few years. It just seems like the ends of halves, the ends of quarters, timeout usages, little things like that, getting the huddles, getting the plays in, those have been issues for A&M, I think, since Jimbo got here. I think this has always been something that A&M has struggled with. How many times has there been an egregious delay of games coming out of a timeout? How many times have they flubbed up the end of a half? How many times have they burned one timeout too many when they really didn't need to burn it? I think the duties transferring over to Bobby Petrino could alleviate that altogether. I think that could be fixed just by Bobby calling plays. Despite what the playbook is, despite how much more creative and explosive the offense gets, I think you iron out a lot of critical moments in the game by having a head coach that is able to be attentive to things other than play calling. Because the way Jimbo calls plays, obviously, it ain't pretty. We've seen him with his newspaper. I mean, I don't know if it's on, it might be on the thumbnail of this video. Just go look at the thumbnail of this video. I think I put a picture of Jimbo holding his papers. So who's calling plays? I think it's going to be Bobby. I think players have said it's Bobby. I think players have hinted at the fact that it's Bobby. And I've talked about this many times throughout my career of making these videos, that Jimbo holds things close to the vest. It's like, he has everything in like a giant safe that no one can penetrate. He's not going to tell you anything. So why would he tell us who's calling the plays when it's a whole different playbook, a whole different set of film and video to look at? Obviously, it would be way more, it would put us at ease to hear him say it. It would definitely put the national media at ease to hear him say it, and he could have done that. But I get being strategic. I get holding your cards close to the vest, and that is something Jimbo has historically done. So that's probably the biggest question mark going into the year. That's number one. But it's kind of boring because everyone's talking about it, and I think there's a clear answer there already, but we'll have to find out to know for sure. My real, most interesting, biggest question going into the year is the offense, obviously, as a whole. Will they be consistent? Will they perform? I mean, are these players that really started making a name for themselves later in the year continue to do so? Connor Wigman, Moose Muhammad, Evan Stewart, Noah Thomas, and getting Anias back. I think those are all going to be a pretty surefire yes, they're good. The big question mark's the offensive line. Last year, they couldn't keep a 5 out there on the field. It was injury after injury, players in, players out. And then finally, a little bit of stability to end the year, and they had their best game of the year versus LSU. So will this offensive line find stability? Will they find a 5 that can stay out there on the field? Keeping your center is paramount for this. You need Bryce Foster out there through all of fall camp, and for every football game, because your center is the quarterback of the offensive line, and that has just been a huge issue since 2020 for Texas A&M is the offensive line. So will the players that had down years like Layden Robinson, self-admittedly having a down year, Fothery kind of didn't continue on his trajectory that we saw his freshman year. I think you can argue a second-year slump for those two guys because we're both at their second year starting. It's time to get that crap together. I'm hoping it happens. That's going to be the key for this offense, because we don't really have question marks about these skill positions. We really don't think we have one about the quarterback. We might as well talk about the quarterback, though. We haven't had stability since Kellen Mond. I mentioned that. There's always been a quarterback battle. We've never really liked who Jimbo's chosen, whether it was Haynes King or Haynes King. Never liked it. It's never really panned out. He couldn't stay on the field. The App State game was a terrible showing. You got to respect Haynes for what he did versus Bama last year. Enough about Haynes King. We have another quarterback battle, as proclaimed by Jimbo Fisher. We think it's going to be Connor Wigman. We hope we have a clear starter earlier in camp maybe than normal, which probably won't happen. But I really hope Jimbo and company knows who the guy is. They're already game planning for it. We really hope it's Connor Wigman. I think as good as Max Johnson is, as impressive as he is, I think you have to go for the insane upside that Connor has. And what he showed versus LSU was very promising. What he showed last season in 4 starts was very promising. No interceptions by a true freshman in 3 SEC games and UMass. Pretty impressive. So quarterback stability. We want to see one guy out there stay healthy, build chemistry with the receivers, build chemistry with the O-line, because we saw what that looks like when it actually becomes consistent for a few games versus LSU. And then there's the defense. Lots of reasons for promise, lots of reasons to be excited, but a lot of youth last year. The D-line was, with McKinley Jackson out, the D-line was primarily freshmen last year, and that definitely showed, especially in the pass rush department. It seemed like the team really struggled to get a consistent push, a consistent pass rush from that young defensive line. Fadil Diggs was clearly the best in this department, and things even picked up a little bit when McKinley Jackson came back. But overall, throughout the whole year, you would say this team struggled with a consistent pass rush from that D-line without stunning. Just an edge guy that can make a play. Now, you're going to get Fadil Diggs back, obviously, as I just mentioned. LT Overton, it seems like he's really leaned into that defensive end build, lost some weight, probably got a little bit quicker. But beyond those two guys, you really have some question marks. You really hope Malik Silla has taken those next steps of physicality, because as good and explosive and promising and long as he is, he was super skinny, super young, and we saw him play more and more throughout the year and have some really good moments, but has his body matured to where he can handle a full year of SEC football? Can he be consistently relied upon? Same goes for Ian White. We saw a lot of him early. He got banged up throughout the year last year. Can those two guys rise to the top and become serious rotational pieces that can affect a football game? Because as good as this D-line is, it's a lot of big guys, a lot of hybrid guys, not a lot of straight-up pass rushers. You're going to want to see that. You're going to want to see that development with those two guys after Fadil and LT. Now, the defensive line, it was an area of concern last year, but it's really not a question mark going into this year. You can only assume the glimpses you saw last year of Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner even, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy coming back into the fray. You can only imagine these guys are going to take a step and really become a force this year. It's the second to last year for a lot of these guys, because most of these guys that I just mentioned are going to go pro after their junior year, I would assume, just because of their sheer physical attributes, and I think they're going to have a pretty good year this year. So defensive line, we want to see them take the next step, but my real question mark there that I really want to see happen is with that edge group progressing, because I think this D-line's going to be solid besides that. But I think that'll happen. It is a question mark, though, and I want to see it. My next question mark on this team, on this defense, as many of you may know, A&M lost Antonio Johnson and Jalen Jones to the draft last year. Two very mature bodies, very mature players, leaders of this defensive group. One in the safety group and one in the corner group. Obviously, there is a ton of talent in this secondary. A lot of reason for excitement with the secondary. But when you lose leaders, when you lose multiple year starters, I think 3-year starters in both of those guys, 2.5 to 3-year starters in both of those guys, there's reason for concern for me there, just in that alone. Not about who's going to step up, just losing those voices, losing those presences, whatever. Lots of great names to pick up the slack there, but where's the leadership coming from, and who's going to step up in that department? My final question on this defense is going to be linebacker depth. Martrell Harris needs to have a great year. I've been talking about that all offseason. I think I mentioned that in like 3 of my offseason videos. You're going to lose Coop. You're going to lose Chris Russell after this season. Most likely you're going to lose Coop. But you're definitely going to lose Russell, and those are your two guys. Who else is stepping up? Terrion Lee? Martrell Harris? I really think Martrell Harris has the potential to be that guy. From what we saw in glimpses of him last year, I need to see him as a rotational piece that consistently can affect the game. But besides that, I don't have other question marks. Those are all of them. And those are probably the ones that you guys have talked about, thought about, and heard about throughout this offseason. I really think the biggest variance area on this team is that offensive line. Because we never saw it for a great stretch last year. We saw one great game, LSU. Besides that, it was a struggle. A lot of A-chain making plays, breaking tackles, and keeping A&M in games. I think about that Arkansas game, which was pretty fluky to begin with, but A-chain had a lot of game-saving moments that game. Can the O-line help out whichever running back is going to step up? Notice I didn't mention the running back room as a question mark. I'm confident in Jimbo and this offense to, facilitate a good atmosphere for whichever running back is chosen. I'm hoping for a three-headed running back attack between Moss, Daniels, and Owens. I'm not too concerned about that room panning out. I'm way more concerned about that O-line. But besides that, guys, what are your biggest question marks going into the year? Are there other things that I didn't mention that you have concerns about? I didn't mention the cornerback concern. I'm confident that there's going to be a second guy that steps up next to Tyreek Chappelle. I think Grimes is the obvious choice to be the next starter, but you never know who it could be. I think those two would be a great starting two, and then you just need to find some quality backups. I'm just more concerned with that secondary losing its leaders than anything. But Damani's still there, so that's good. So what do you guys have? What other question marks are on the radar that I missed? But I'll see you guys tomorrow when we talk about the next topic in Aggie football. And that'll be the opposite end of this spectrum. We'll be talking about the major strengths of this team that I'm confident in to start the year. So guys, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps me greatly. I'll see you on the next one. Giggle.